All right, welcome. We're here for another edition of the Free Arkansas podcast, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Duffield. Matt, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing great, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. We're here with Brad Henry. Brad, you doing okay?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Andy.
And we're going to, and I didn't mean to talk on top of you, but we're happy that you're here. I'm going to give an introduction in a second. But Matt, why don't you give us an introduction on Free Arkansas and what we're about?
Yeah, well, welcome to the Free Arkansas podcast, where we are all about a free exchange of ideas, nonpartisan discussion, totally open discussion. And our goal is simple. It is to help make Arkansas a better place for everyone in all facets. We are here to help move Arkansas forward and make it a better place. And we're the place to discuss that and have people like our friend Brad on today to discuss that.
And Brad is the managing partner and co-founder at Natural Capital Partners, and which is an investment fund. You might say a private equity fund, which we don't have very many in Arkansas. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Prior to that, he worked at the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, and before that at Stevens. So pretty much, Brad, you've had a front row view to the economic activity in the state of Arkansas. I guess most of your career, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, one of the things that when we look at our state, there's so many things where we, if it's a list of something good, oftentimes we're at the bottom of that list. Sometimes, you hear the thank God for Mississippi or West Virginia. And if it's something that's, bad, we're at the top of the list. Where do you think we fall? I don't have any specific right in front of me, but where do you think we fall in terms of, economic indicators that you would be aware of, in terms of the states? I know we don't have a lot of private equity capital here, but tell me, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. So when I was with the state, one of the primary indicators that we tracked was per capita personal income. And we generally were towards the bottom, although we've made a fair progress over the last really 20 years. Between, I think Governor Beebe made it a focus, and then Governor Hutchinson and Governor Sanders have continued to focus on growing incomes and recruiting high paying jobs to the state of Arkansas. And it can be a little bit of a, you'll have fairly high incomes in, Central Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and Northeast Arkansas is catching up around the Jonesboro area. But then you've got our rural parts of the state that, generally continue to struggle from an income standpoint. And so that was always where we focused at the state, was how do we, when we were working on economic development projects, how do we make sure that the projects that we were working on, if we were to win them, boosted that income in the area that it was located in, right? Whether that was any part of the state, right? Was that project going to bring jobs that were paying higher than what the average wage was in the region?
I'm curious. Here in the River Valley area, I've been involved in economic development for, decades, really. And I think it's pretty tough. And I will even say as, an entrepreneur, as I try to bring people to the state, one of the things that they would do is they would look at lists, right? Like the first thing, if I try to move someone to this state, they would look at, say, education. Maybe they look at crime, things like that. When you at the state level were trying to attract businesses, what was the sort of the secret sauce of doing something like that?
Education was definitely high on the list, and as a focus area, the benefits, and you've got your pockets where education is doing well, and pockets of where education rankings aren't so great. I know there was some efforts to improve, especially on the teacher side during this past session, Matt, with, in terms of helping teachers with paid maternity leave and things like that. And I think those were all really good steps, and, how we improve teacher performance and therefore performance of the student. So that was always a big question. On the positive side, cost of doing business was always, the state of Arkansas continues to rank very well there. And
Yep.
so that was always something that we leaned on, and having the labor force as well, folks generally want to go to work here in Arkansas. And so those were two of the areas that, when we did have indicators that folks would ask about that maybe weren't as positive, we could lean on those to help get projects done.
Matt, I'm curious, and I don't know if you've got, I'll just tee this up as a question for you. Maybe you can flip it to Brad here. At the State House, there's probably, I know that we're putting an amendment to the Constitution that has as an economic bent to the whole thing. What are the things that you guys talk about this last session that were really economic drivers? AI, power, what other thing, lithium? What are some of the things that happened down there?
Well, it really depended. Brad kind of hit on this about Arkansas being such an eclectic state. It really depends on the region of the state, we looked at, and then we as a body, we would try to work together and say, look, what we're working for in your area may not apply here in the River Valley or Northwest or so on and so forth. But we really, our job as legislators in regards to economic development really comes down to working together, because a lot of things, for example, that I may vote on, I may vote on certain things that are not going to help my district, help Russellville per se, but it's going to be great for Magnolia, South Arkansas, so forth, different areas. So, we really look at it like that, more than anything. Economic development, I'll say this, I wish it was more of a priority than it was and that it is. I think it is a priority, it is, but I just think we can always do more. And, a lot of times it kind of gets, I don't want to say push the bottom, but I still think it should be more. And hopefully next session we'll continue to discuss it and keep trying to work together. A lot of times at the legislature, this Brad being a state government, we'll get caught on these topics that a lot of times aren't necessarily moving a needle forward. And they kind of, we have 90 days essentially to go down there every other year and do it. So, but I think that's the whole thing is we just keep, and that's the thing, Brad, about this podcast. We're here to discuss all this and bring people like you on so we can get these discussions and continue to keep improving all of it,
I have this impression that, I don't know, this would be interesting, Brad, when you were there. Do you feel like when you were there that Bentonville had already started the trajectory that we see today? Was it because today I feel like it's unique.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I've been gone. So we started Natural Capital right at 6 years ago. And so, I've been gone for a little bit, and what's happened in Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas, especially post-COVID, I feel like it's accelerated even more than it was still really strong, but I don't think, especially if you haven't seen it yet, I think it takes seeing it, but seeing the Walmart campus where now that the home office campus that's open, where they're only, I think 50 or 60%, where they brought everybody back, right? They're still opening buildings right now. And that'll be done by the fall. So you'll have, the full HQ operating and fully, where they brought everybody back. That combined with what the Walton family has invested at Crystal Bridges and the new medical school that's scheduled to open this fall, I think it has only accelerated since then. There was a stat last year where there were more cranes per capita up in Benton County than there were in Manhattan and New York.
Yeah, I would believe that.
It's pretty impressive, and it's a primary reason why Northwest Arkansas is such a focus on our real estate for natural capitalist real estate.
Well, yeah, which I'm going to get to that in 1 second. Yeah, because I look at it and I say it's a, it's a unique asset, right? And
right.
So, but I have this sort of view if we go out and maybe we'll come back, we'll bring in natural capital into this, that, that if we went out 20 years and we were to reflect, we were sitting there 20 years looking back, some people, some states, some cities, some locations that sit middle of the pack, below the pack will have accelerated up the list. Something magical would have happened. And other cities, it won't. They'll be the some sad story. And so the question is really like, how do we get there? Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about that. But before we do that, okay, so you're working for the state. How does natural capital come about?
Sure. So it really is a driver from relationships and a group of Arkansans that wanted to bring something new to the state of Arkansas that wasn't available at the time. So I have 3 co-founders that started Natural Capital with me. Todd Simmons, who is the CEO and vice chairman of Simmons Foods, which is located in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. And Brock Gearhart, who is CEO of Greenwood Gearhart Investment Advisory Firm in Fayetteville, and Marshall Saviors, who is CEO of Cushman Wakefield Sage Partners, which is headquartered in Rogers and also has office in Little Rock. And so we had all known each other for a while, different periods of times, been friends for a while. I mean, Marshall and I go back to the 8th grade here in Little Rock, right? So high level of trust between the 4 of us. And, we were talking about private capital formation in Arkansas. And, at the time and before, primarily, only large families, that everybody knows, that we're right. Friends with, that we're close with, and thankful for all the things that they've done for the state, right? You think Walton family, Stevens family, Tyson, Hunt, right? Ford family, all those families that have been instrumental in investing here in the state of Arkansas. They've always driven private investment in the state at a high level, and they are blessed with the where they don't have to raise capital from outside parties. They can do that on their own.
It's a nice thing, isn't it? If you just have
wonderful.
To have
I hope one day we're all
account.
There. But there's a lot of families in Arkansas that would like to, that have built wealth over time and would like to be able to participate in private investing both here in Arkansas and the broader region. And there really wasn't a platform to do that. You had to kind of do it on your own.
Right.
And so we set out to set up a company that provided that platform for families to be able to invest in opportunities here in Arkansas, both real estate and companies here in Arkansas and the surrounding region. And so that's what we did. And, so how I got involved, right, is one of my roles at Arkansas Development Finance Authority was to manage a fund for the state, an investment fund for the state of Arkansas. So I had, 6 or 7 years experience doing that. And Marshall and Brock and Todd had the idea and they needed somebody to run it. And I said, sure, why not? Let's go try that out. And so here we are 6 years later. We've made 27 investments. We have about $220 million of assets under management. We represent about 100 families as our investor base. Most of or a high percentage, 90% of those are here in Arkansas, which we're very proud of. We're on a first name basis with all of them. We knew almost all of them before we even started, had a relationship with them before we even started. And so that's what we set out to do. And so far, 6 years in, we've been able to achieve that.
Matt, before I ask anything, is there anything you'd like to know before I get to the next?
Yeah, I think, Brad, just a little bit, just for the listeners, if you could speak a little of, about natural capital and just kind of explain to the listeners who may, economics is not their forte, exactly what a private investment firm is and how one works, essentially.
Right. Yeah, no, happy to do that. So what we did was when we started the firm, we, firms like ours whether they're located here in all over the business model is you raise a fund, right? You go to investors and you ask them to invest in a fund, and then you take that capital, that pool of capital, and you go find opportunities to invest in, deploy that capital in investments. And we're a private investment fund, which means that we're not buying Walmart stock or Tyson stock or publicly traded companies. We're finding private investments to purchase and private assets to purchase. Our strategy, we invest in real estate and companies as well. And so we deploy that capital, we make those investments, we manage those, meaning we work on them on a daily basis to hopefully improve their value. And then at the right time, look to sell those assets. And when we sell those assets, then hopefully we've done well enough that our investors will want to come back and invest with us again. And then we'll do the same thing over and over and over. So we're on our second fund now, right? So, to date, our investors have been happy with the performance, so they've come back. And so that's generally how it works, right? You want to kind of rinse and repeat, where you find investments, you invest in them, and then ultimately you'll sell those and return that capital back to the investors.
And one thing that might be context for anybody that was listening, a lot of times private equity or these private sort of funds sometimes can get a bad rap, just in the, that people talk about out in the world, but really since, Dodd-Frank and Sarbanes-Oxley, your ability as an individual, let's say someone here in Arkansas, and they want to invest in one of the companies that's going on here. If we were in the 90s or the 80s, those companies, just like the company that I'm with, we would be publicly traded. But Matt, just like you have a family business, you can't get a stock of that, right? But the idea that should be that somebody has private capital, they provide a business a valuable service, like Brad said, of improving it, and then at the next, let's say, train stop, you get off and the next capital comes on board. Brad, I'm pretty sure, like when I think about it, other than the families that you mentioned, I only really am aware of maybe one or two funds in the whole state. So New Roads Capital Partners, you could probably say McClarty Capital Partners was a fund, even though it's really New York based. Is there other funds out there that aren't like wealthy
you've
families?
got New Road up in Rogers, and they focus very heavily on logistics businesses. And then you've got Firmament, which was formerly McClarty, right? And then on the real estate side, you've got Tempest Real Estate, which is here in Little Rock, that invests in real estate, but primarily outside the state of Arkansas. Yeah, and that's really it.
So I really think, versus if you go to Dallas, Texas, and you go to like one little place, Old Parkland, I mean, there's, I don't know, dozens and dozens, maybe 100 family offices and God knows how many private equity firms. And so it's really something that we need here in Arkansas. Tell me about this.
Andy, let me add Circumference Group to that list. So, they've launched an angel and VC fund.
That's right. Well. Is that Jeff Fox? Is that Jeff?
That's Jeff Fox's family office. And as part of that, they have launched a VC fund here recently. So we definitely don't want to leave them out. They're in Little Rock. So and their fund is focused on early stage Arkansas companies, which is a great thing. So
now, Brad, when you guys look at what's attractive from an investment perspective, how much of those 27 investments that you've done were Arkansas companies just for somewhere else?
We've made one investment in an Arkansas company.
Okay. Well, for the other ones, a lot of them, I know that some of the real estate is located here, right?
That's right. The real estate, we've made 18, I think, investments in real estate, and 16 of those are in Arkansas.
Got it. So when you guys are looking at what, your deal flow and thinking about what you're going to invest in next, do you, at least from a property perspective, are you sort of focused here on the region, Arkansas, maybe Oklahoma, a little Louisiana, Missouri? Or is it, because it's hard to be focused everywhere in something like that?
No, our primary focus on the real estate side is Northwest Arkansas. We are looking at a few other opportunities in broadly in Arkansas, but we're very focused on from a real estate standpoint in Northwest Arkansas because of the growth that we talked about earlier and the relationships that we have in the region up there,
which are fantastic. So I think you guys have a pretty deep reach out into that. Matt said earlier that. At least I think you said this, Matt, the number of cranes, or did Brad, you say that about the
number of cranes? That's right.
Yeah. Do you think that, tell me where is there a risk that it's getting overbuilt? I know in certain markets like Austin, there's too many multifamilies built. Where do you think about Northwest Arkansas and where do you see it going from a growth perspective?
Yeah, I don't, and it's a fair question because we have seen high growth areas get overbuilt, whether that be in office or industrial or in multifamily, which are areas of focus that we look at. Vacancy in Washington County today is sub 3%. It may have ticked up above 3 recently. Benton County is at like 4.5. And so the absorption of multifamily and single family happens really fast when you have vacancy rates that low. And then you've got, from an office standpoint, the demand for office in Northwest Arkansas is one of the few areas where there's actually increased demand. And that's really driven by the opening of Walmart and the of the Walmart campus and all the vendors that serve that, with Walmart announcing that they're 100% back to office, no more hybrid or work from home. That means all the vendors up there have to effectively or pushed to do the same, where they're bringing all their people back to work. And then you've got Tyson and JB Hunt, which they never did a work from home, right? And so there is a mentality in Northwest Arkansas that everybody comes to the office. And so with the growth that's occurring, there's just not enough office space up there. Industrial is probably about right, but there's not that much industrial being built right now. It's primarily office and medical office. So, with the growth in population, you need more support services, especially on the medical side. And so there's plans for Washington Regional to expand. There's plans for Highlands Oncology to expand, Mercy Health Systems to expand, and then of course what the Walton family is doing, and specifically Alice Walton is doing related to the medical school that's being built in Benton County. The per person per day they're at 38 people per day moving in and increasing. So wow. As long as that continues, the demand for real estate development is probably going to be there for a little while longer.
Matt, what are you interested in?
Yeah, well, I'd like, Brad, I see here, you were a Hendrix grad. Mm-hmm. And your degree was in financial economics. My brother, he was also a Hendrix grad.
Oh, great!
And one thing I've noticed since I've been in office now, is Hendrix College has a lot of very influential, hardworking people who have stayed in the state of Arkansas and like yourself with natural capital, and it seems like there are a lot of different branches from Hendrix College. So perhaps maybe you could, elaborate on that, how, you've left Hendrix and you decided to, I assume have you stayed in Arkansas throughout the duration of your career? So you've stayed here. So I guess, one of the things on Free Arkansas I'm looking forward is we want to keep college graduates here. So perhaps we go that route and what might you suggest, Brad, or what you see like where people can follow in your footsteps, because obviously you've been very successful What do you think the state of Arkansas, what do you think we could do to help keep college graduates here and working in the state?
Yeah, we're the Hendricks alumni. We're small but mighty, right? So love my time at Hendricks. I'm from Little Rock originally. Graduated from Central High and then went to Hendricks. And after Hendricks, went to the University of Arkansas for my master's degree. So yeah, I always planned to stay here in Arkansas, and that benefited me, that decision, because of the relationships that I was able to build and the experience that I was able to get here at home, rather than feeling like I needed to go to Dallas or Chicago or somewhere else. And I think the biggest opportunity that we have as a state from education standpoint is helping not only students originally from Arkansas understand that, but also the students that are coming from outside the state, right? Hendricks draws a high percentage of kids from Dallas and other large metropolitan areas. And, so does the University of Arkansas. I'm sure Arkansas Tech does too. And the biggest opportunity and key is keeping them here, right? Yeah. And not running back to Dallas as soon as they get done with school. And I think we're getting better at that. That's always, that's tough because there's so many opportunities in Dallas, but the more opportunities that we can present in front of them, especially in differing industries, right? The better we have to continue to grow and build upon the recent success we've had as a state from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that one of the things I used to do is I used to go get the valedictorian at Russellville High School and ask him to intern for me. And I would do it. And I thought at the time when I started this, I thought, oh, I'll use this as a way to kind of get people to work for me later. But one of the things that happened year after year after year is they'd go away and they wouldn't come back. So we definitely, Matt, it's definitely an issue for sure. How do we get them back to the state? And I think part of that is, a blend of many things, but education, safety, infrastructure, opportunity, we could go on and on. So I couldn't agree with you more. Brad, investing in the real estate side of things, tell me what you think about, if you have an opinion about the state of our infrastructure here in Arkansas. Power, water. Do you have a view on that?
I think one of our probably, and I know some others agree, but one of our most underutilized assets that we have as a recruiting tool, right, from a from an overall nature standpoint, is the amount of water that we have here in the state, right? You got Texas, Arizona, some of these other states that, they don't have enough water. And we have abundant water sources. And I think over time, that's going to really benefit the state. Generally, I think we're pretty good on power. I know some folks everybody wishes their energy rates were lower. I've still got plenty of friends over at Entergy and the co-op, so I'll be nice to them today. But I do think the opportunity from a water standpoint is something that we need to continue to take advantage of and market as well.
Yeah, because I sort of look at it and think that, one of the advantages that we potentially have is the fact that our power on a consumption unit, kilowatt is lower. And I think that in a world where we envision more AI, more Internet of Things, more connectivity, not less, we're going to need a lot more power. So to me, that's another area where potentially we could set ourselves up as a state that's a little bit different. When you're investing on the real estate side, what are you guys looking for? Are you guys mostly multifamily? Is it office? Is it, I think if I remember, one of the things I thought that you guys did at one point was, did you guys do like a freezer storage You know,
we did purchase a cold storage facility in Van Buren, Arkansas. So really, what we're looking for, we're lucky to have experts kind of in all three, right? Industrial, office, and housing that are on our team, and so we'll invest across asset class. We're generally looking for in place product that can generate a healthy return for our investors in growing areas, right? So Northwest Arkansas is a great example, right? So outside of that, we're pretty agnostic in terms of the type of asset that we're looking for.
Matt, what else are you curious about?
Yeah, I think go back to some meat and potatoes questions here on natural capital, your company, and investing. So when you go, Brad, and you guys look at investing in whatever it is, do you typically go and you pursue the entity to invest in, or do you guys have people that come to you seeking investment dollars, or what's the process like with you guys?
We generally have people coming to us. It's usually through a relationship, someone we already know. Either we know the business owner directly, or we know someone that has, that knows that company. We will be proactive in some instances, but primarily it's more inbound today than it is outbound.
So you typically would look for people you have a relationship and a certain level of,
That's right.
You know who they are, because I know we all see stories. You'll see these stories pop up on 60 Minutes of some guy that starts this investment scheme or whatnot, and next thing you know, the guy's off in Europe or whatever.
Right. No, so we have our investment pillars, and relationship is number one. Right.
Sure.
We've got to have that relationship with someone before.
So would you say typically it's people in Arkansas that you're doing
generally, yeah. I mean, we have investments throughout the region. Birmingham, Alabama, Minneapolis, Austin, St. Louis, Tulsa, but those have been brought to us by someone that we know very well, and most of those relationships are here in Arkansas. And hopefully we're going to find more opportunities, especially on the company side, to invest here in Arkansas. I think as we continue to grow as a firm, I think those opportunities will present themselves more and more.
Well, on that note, what do you see as the next big opportunity here in the state of Arkansas for entrepreneurs, Brad?
Well, I think there's been a significant initiative to grow more technology businesses here in Arkansas, which we're big supporters of. In Northeast Arkansas, right, with everything that's going on with the steel industry, that continues to present great opportunities. I'm not as familiar with it. We haven't spent as much time on the lithium opportunities in South Arkansas, but those seem to be presenting opportunities as well. And so I think those are just a few, but there's plenty. That is, you mentioned it, Matt. It kind of depends on where you are in the state as to what the opportunities are. They're very diverse. And so that presents a great opportunity for entrepreneurs here in the state. I mean, who knew you could build a giant water company in Russellville, Arkansas?
You just never know, right?
You just never know.
Never know. Brad, I'm curious, we're all subject to short-term macro aspects of the economy. From terms of how you think about it, whether it's tariffs, interest rates, inflation, and how you look at the rest of the year, I know from where I sit, I can see that M&A activity has gone down substantially this year, right, on a year-over-year basis in the U.S., certainly in certain sectors. How do you guys feel about that? And how does it impact you, if any?
So we try not to let it impact us as much as we can, right? It obviously does. We have very little ability to cause any change there. So we monitor it, but we don't let it slow us down or stop us. I think, I heard a good comment from from someone that has a lot bigger investment firm than the Natural Capital, and is, leaders, good leaders find a way to still get things done, even in the face of areas that they can't control. And that's where I'd put interest rates and tariffs in that bucket, right? We can't control those, but we've got to factor them in and still find a way to find good investment opportunities for our investors, because they do expect us to continue to deploy capital and find good opportunities.
This is totally a little off topic, but I'm just curious if you got an opinion on this. Matt, I'd be curious of opinion of you on this too. I noticed the other day, and this might be a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month, but that one of the executive orders was to set up a cryptocurrency reserve. You got a view on cryptocurrency?
I don't. That's an area we have generally stayed away from. We've studied it, but it's not something that's part of our strategy to date.
Yeah, Matt, you got a view on crypto?
Yeah, I'll just say this, Andy. My grandpa told me one time the money he counts is the money in his hip pocket, and when it comes to invisible digital currency, that's not something I'm involved with at this time.
Well, what I find so fascinating about it is, just when you have the insidious aspects of inflation, you have to do something, and this inflation is just driven by the choices that all the governments make. I guess you might even say collectively, because they're adding money into the system. Sure. And other things, and so I find it interesting arguments, but I'm still not as smart as I can be on it. No. And I wonder if I'm missing something when the U.S. government decides to set up a reserve, and I don't even know that much about it. It sounds like anyway. Just didn't know if you guys had really focused on that. Matt, what else are you interested in?
Yeah, well, Brad, I mean, I think I guess we get back here to the meat and potatoes. You've been really successful in economic investment, got a degree in it. I assume your master's degree was in that as well. So what advice would you have to the 18, 19-year-old? He's fresh out of high school, and he's got an entrepreneurial spirit here in the state of Arkansas. I guess what advice would you have for that person to be successful, who, they might be out of high school, they don't have access to a lot of capital, but they've got the want to start a business and do something?
I think it's, if they've got the want to, don't be afraid to work hard and just put in the work and take risk, right? You can, if you don't try it, right, you're going to fail 100% of the time. And so identify something you're passionate about and you feel like you can be good at. I think that's important too. And go for it.
I got one last question.
Don't really, feel free to ask folks for help, but you're going to have to do a lot of it yourself.
Well, for sure, starting that and doing all the hard work, there's nothing easy about being a good investor. And for you guys to have one fund, and then I believe you doubled your second fund, it looks easy from the outside, but it's super hard. So congratulations on all your success.
I appreciate it.
So hypothetically, let's say that you're back, working at the state, working on economic development through the Development Finance Authority, and you're giving Governor Sanders some advice about what to do. What would you say the things they should focus on in order to, move the needle during their tenure?
Well, I know she's focused on, reducing the income tax, and I think that's a good thing, especially given the states around us, and whatever we can do to improve education. Those are kind of two big areas, and then at the project level, it's just, continuing to support what the Department of Commerce's initiatives are. And, I think making sure, which Matt mentioned, that our economic development strategy works for the entire state, which I think that she is definitely focused on, and that everybody can feel like that they can win with the strategy that's out there.
Excellent. Brad, really appreciate your time. Matt, you want to close us down here?
Yeah, sure, Brad. Thanks so much for the time coming on Free Arkansas. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, comment below. Tell us what you thought about today's episode. If you have any thoughts on economic development in the state, what would you like to see? Brad mentioned that, we're looking at, as a state legislature and the governor has mentioned, we're looking at help slashing to ultimately get rid of our income tax. What do you think about that? What do you think about the other taxes in the state, property taxes? Give us your thought on today's episode, economic development, taxes, or anything else that's on your mind. Don't hold back on Free Arkansas.
Brad, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.